The East and West regions of Africa are home to some of the most troubled economies on the continent. These are the Republic of Kenya and the Republic of Ghana. Both countries are facing tough economic times, putting pressure on the governments to make necessary improvements. In this episode, we compare the two economies to understand their relative performance, strengths, weaknesses, similarities, and differences. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing to support us and to ensure you never miss such insightful videos. We shall start with the key economic measures and metrics. This comparison relies on data from the IMF as of October 2024 and the Observatory for Economic Complexity. With regard to the size of the economies, Kenya has a GDP of $116.32 billion. In comparison, Ghana's GDP stands at $75.31 billion. Kenya's economy is therefore bigger by about $40 billion. The GDP per capita of the two nations is much closer. Kenya's GDP per capita stands at $2,220 compared to Ghana's $2,230. Thus, despite Kenya having a bigger economy, Ghana has a similar but marginally higher GDP per capita, explaining why both nations are classified as lower middle-income economies. Kenya and Ghana perform averagely in economic growth, outperforming many bigger economies such as Nigeria and South Africa. According to the IMF, Kenya's annual GDP growth rate is 5%. However, the World Bank has just revised its estimate to 4.7%. This growth rate is notably higher when compared to Ghana's 3.1%. Despite Kenya growing at a faster pace, both nations are experiencing some significant progress. Although both countries have similar GDP per capita, Kenya is slightly better with regard to managing inflation. This difference is evident in Kenya's average annual inflation rate of 5.1%, which is much lower than Ghana's inflation rate of 19.5%. Essentially, Ghana's inflation crisis is about 4 times worse than that of Kenya. Both countries have relatively high public debt when compared to other African economies. In particular, Kenya's public debt has marginally declined, and now stands at 69.9% of the GDP, significantly lower than that of Ghana, which stands at 82.5% of the GDP, also representing a small decline. With regard to trade, Kenya's exports are mainly agricultural. The top exports from the country include tea, cut flowers, coffee, titanium ore, and tropical fruits. On the other hand, both agriculture and mining dominate Ghana's exports. The country's top exports include gold, crude petroleum, cocoa beans, coconuts, and Brazil nuts. In terms of total exports value, Kenya ranks 115th globally at $7.34 billion, while Ghana ranks 79th at about $20 billion. Thus, Ghana significantly outperforms Kenya in terms of exports. In sum, when comparing the two nations, Kenya's economic strengths lie in the higher GDP growth rate and lower inflation rate, while the main weakness is the lower value of exports. As for Ghana, the strength lies in the high value of exports, while high inflation and higher public debt are the notable weaknesses. Therefore, while both countries have growing economies with almost similar GDP per capita, they differ with regard to the size of the economy, inflation rate, and exports, each with a different aspect of dominance. Which of these economies do you think is performing better? Please leave a comment below including questions, clarifications, and suggestions.